He sat in the corner of the barracks, quietly repairing worn-out boots. No one cared until a recruit noticed the scar on his arm, and the entire room went silent. The man's name was Samuel Rains, but everyone called him Old Sam. He wasn't listed on the training rosters, he wasn't in the command briefings, he wasn't even a uniformed soldier anymore. His job, as far as anyone could tell, was maintenance, clothing, boots, gear, the kind of work that didn't draw attention. Every evening, as the barracks filled with the voices of recruits, Sam would set himself in the corner near the light of a single lamp. His wooden bench creaked under his weight, a toolbox sat at his feet, and a pile of battered boots waited for his hands. His motions were slow but deliberate. Needle through leather, pull, knot, trim. The rhythm was steady, like a heartbeat. Recruits joked about how he looked more like a ghost than a man, sitting there every night in silence. Some said he was a retired quartermaster. Others thought he'd just been hired by the base as cheap labor. But nobody really knew. That night, one recruit decided to break the silence. He tossed a worn-out boot toward Sam's bench. It skidded across the floor and landed against Sam's toolbox with a dull thud. "Hey, old man," the recruit called out with a grin. "Think you can fix this one before lights out?" Laughter rippled through the barracks. A few others joined in, tossing comments, half playful, half mocking. Sam didn't react. He picked up the boot, turned it slowly in his hands and studied the cracked sole. He gave a single nod and began his work. That's when another recruit, sitting closer, noticed something beneath Sam's sleeve. At first he thought it was a shadow. Then as Sam's arm shifted under the lamp, he saw it clearly. A scar, deep, jagged, running from elbow to wrist. Not an accident scar, not a factory scar. This was different, sharp, surgical almost, but brutal in its shape. The kind of scar that told stories without words. "Hey," the recruit whispered, nudging his buddy. "Look at his arm." The laughter quieted. One by one, heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. The scar had pulled every eye toward it, like gravity. Sam kept stitching. His hands never wavered, but he could feel the silence now. Slowly, he set the boot down and rolled his sleeve higher, exposing the full length of the mark. For a moment, the room was frozen. Finally, one voice spoke. "Where'd you get that?" Sam looked up. His eyes, steel gray, sharp despite his age, met theirs. He studied the young men before him, measuring whether they deserved even a fragment of the truth. Then he said, in a voice calm and even, "Long way from here, long time ago." The recruits waited. They wanted more. They leaned forward, questions burning on their lips, but Sam just reached for the boot again, needle poised, and resumed his steady rhythm. It was only later, when the recruits had gone quiet in their bunks, that whispers began. Who was he? Where had he served? And why was he hiding in plain sight, repairing boots in silence? The truth stretched back decades. In 1972, Samuel Rains wasn't a janitor or a cobbler. He was Lieutenant Sam Rains, call sign Whisper 6, flying an A-7 Corsair II over the jungles of Vietnam. His missions weren't glamorous. They weren't written about in newspapers. They were the kind of flights that started with sealed envelopes and ended with empty fuel tanks and silence. Interdictions, escorts, strikes where the maps showed no names. One night mission had changed him forever. His squadron was tasked with protecting a crippled Phantom limping back from the border. Sam flew cover at 3,000 feet when anti-aircraft tracers lit the sky like fireworks. His Corsair took a direct hit. Metal shrieked, shrapnel sliced through the cockpit, tearing into his arm. Pain was instant. Blood filled his glove. His hand almost lost its grip on the stick. The ground control screamed for him to eject. But he didn't. He couldn't. Another pilot, call sign Viper 2, was still in the kill zone. If Sam punched out, Viper 2 would be alone. So he stayed. One arm burning, controls slick with blood, he kept flying formation, banking, dipping, drawing fire, until the Phantom crossed into safer skies. Only then did he limp his Corsair back, barely making it to a landing strip where medics pulled him from the cockpit. The doctor said he should have lost the arm. Some said he should have lost his life. Instead, he carried the scar, and he carried the silence. Back in the barracks, the recruits didn't know any of this. All they saw was an old man with a broom, a needle, and a scar. But scars have gravity. They pull at the imagination. The recruits began to notice other things. How Sam's tools were laid out, not like a shoemaker, but like an armorer. How his posture was straight, even when seated. how his eyes scanned a room the way soldiers do, taking in exits, corners, lines of sight. None of this fit the image of a simple maintenance man. One recruit, bolder than the rest, tried again the next night. "Sir, were you in the military?" Sam didn't look up. He tied off a stitch, cut the thread clean, and finally spoke. "I did my time," he said. "Now I fix boots." The recruits traded looks. It wasn't an answer, but it wasn't a denial either. Another asked, "What did you do? Were you infantry? Armor?" Sam paused. His hand hovered over the boot for a second longer than usual. Then he said, softly, "I flew." The room went still. "You were a pilot," someone whispered. Sam looked up. His eyes glinted in the lamplight, sharp as steel. He gave a single nod. And that was all. No details, no missions, no medals, just "I flew." The recruits felt the weight of it, and though their questions burned hotter than ever, they didn't press, because sometimes the silence told more than words ever could. And so, each night after, when old Sam sat in that same corner, the barracks grew quieter. The laughter softened. The recruits' eyes lingered on him longer, because now they knew the scar on his arm was just the beginning, and they couldn't help but wonder, what else was he hiding? He was back in the corner of the barracks the next evening, needle flashing in the lamplight, boots lined up like soldiers waiting for inspection. The recruits had stopped mocking him. The laughter from the previous week had faded into a kind of watchful silence. Old Sam didn't mind. Silence was familiar. He'd lived in it for years, but silence has weight, and this night it pressed heavier than usual. One recruit, Private Allen, finally broke it. "Sir, yesterday you said you flew." Sam didn't look up. He drove the needle through thick leather, pulled the thread tight. "Yes." Allen hesitated. "What did you fly?" Sam tied off the stitch, cut it with his knife, and set the boot aside. Then he slowly pushed his sleeve up again, exposing the scar that had started all this. His eyes swept across the room. "A 7 Corsair 2, he said at last. "Navy bird. She could take more punishment than most men I've ever met." The recruits leaned forward. The air in the barracks shifted. Allen pressed, voice softer now. "Where did you fly?" Sam's answer was a whisper. "Vietnam." The word hung there like smoke. Half the recruits had heard of it only from old textbooks or documentaries. But coming from Sam, with that scar running the length of his arm, the war suddenly felt closer, alive in the room. Sam leaned back on his bench, eyes drifting to a place none of them could see. "I was young," he began. "Younger than most of you. Thought flying meant glory, thought medals meant something. First time I strapped into that cockpit, I believed the sky was mine. Took me about a week to learn the sky doesn't belong to anyone." He paused, his voice steady but weighted. "We flew low, too low. Anti-aircraft guns waited in the tray lines. You learned quick, hesitation meant fire on your canopy. And if you went down," he tapped the scar, "sometimes you didn't come back." The recruits exchanged glances. Some shifted uncomfortably in their bunks. They wanted to ask about missions, about dogfights, about what it felt like to skim the jungle canopy at 500 knots, but they held back. She was limping, fuel bleeding fast. We were supposed to keep the skies clear while she crawled home. That's when the jungle lit up, tracers everywhere, like the 4th of July in hell. One hit my bird straight through the fuselage. Shrapnel carved this. He ran his finger along the scar, and nearly took the stick out of my hand. Allen swallowed hard. "What did you do?" Sam's eyes hardened. "What I had to. I stayed in formation. If I punched out, Viper 2 would have been cut off. I held that Corsair together with one arm and a prayer until we cleared the zone. By the time I landed, my cockpit looked like a slaughterhouse." The recruits were silent now, the weight of the story pressing down. Sam didn't smile. He didn't dramatize. He just told it plain, like a weather report, but that plainness made it hit harder. Days turned into weeks, and the recruits kept watching Sam. They noticed small things: how he walked the hangar, eyes scanning as if still on patrol; how he flinched, not from loud noises, but from sudden silences; how he could tell, just by the way a recruit laced his boots, whether he'd been rushed or careful. Sam wasn't just fixing boots, he was watching, teaching without saying a word. Then one night, something shifted. A storm rolled in, wind howling against the barracks windows. The recruits were restless, tossing cards, telling stories. Someone pulled out a book of Vietnam War photos. Pages flipped. Helicopters, infantry in rice paddies, smoke over villages. Allen glanced at Sam in the corner. "Sir," he said cautiously, "were you ever shot down?" Sam's needle paused mid-stitch. He set the boot down. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then quietly, "Yes." The room froze. It was 73. Night mission. Heavy cloud cover. We thought we were clear. His voice tightened. We weren't. Missile strike hit the wing. I ejected over jungle I'd never seen before. A recruit whispered, "How long were you down there?" Sam's eyes narrowed. "Long enough." He didn't give details. Not yet. But the recruits leaned in, sensing the unfinished story. Zygarnik's pull at work, the half-open door that begged to be walked through. The next night, Alan returned to the subject. "What happened, sir? When you ejected?" Sam didn't answer immediately. He pulled his sleeve back down, folded his scarred arm across his chest. "I walked," he said at last, "for 3 days. No food. Little water. The jungle was louder than any battlefield. Bugs, birds, things you couldn't see but knew were watching. I moved at night, hid by day." "Did you make it to friendly lines?" Sam shook his head slowly. "No. A patrol found me first. Not ours." The recruits stiffened. "They kept me in a hut, thin bamboo walls, guards with rusted rifles, no uniform, no name, just another American pilot who fell out of the sky." His voice hardened, but never rose. "They asked questions. I gave name, rank, serial number, nothing more. They didn't like that. The scar isn't the only thing I brought home, some wounds you don't see." The recruits exchanged uneasy looks. For the first time, they realized Sam wasn't telling a war story. He was revealing pieces of survival. Alan whispered, "How did you get out?" Sam's jaw tightened. He looked at the needle in his hand as though it were a different tool from a different time. "Not alone," he said. "There were others, men I never saw again. We broke out one night, ran through the jungle with dogs behind us. Some didn't make it. I did. That's all that matters now." He picked the boot back up and resumed stitching. Conversation over. But the recruits couldn't let it go. Over the following weeks, they treated him differently. No one mocked him anymore. They began leaving their boots neatly at his bench, not just for repair, but almost as offerings. They'd sit near him in silence, waiting for scraps of memory he might drop. Sam never gave them everything, but he gave them enough. Enough to understand that history wasn't just in books. Sometimes it was sitting in the corner of your barracks, holding a needle with a scar running down his arm. One night Alan asked the question they all feared. "Sir, do you regret it?" Sam stopped, looked at him long and hard. "I regret the men I couldn't bring back. I regret the names etched on walls that should have grown old beside me. But the flying, the missions, the service?" He shook his head. "No, the sky was cruel, but it was also home." The recruits absorbed his words, the finality in them. Sam leaned forward, voice softer now. "Remember this. It isn't medals that matter, not uniforms, not parades. It's the man next to you, the one whose life depends on yours. That's the only weight worth carrying." He pulled the last stitch tight, set the boot down, and stood. For the first time, the recruits noticed he stood straighter than any of them. His posture was still military, still precise, and as he walked out of the barracks into the stormy night, not one voice followed him. They just watched in silence, knowing they had glimpsed a past far heavier than their own futures.